Cabaret, and I will be your MC for the rest of the day. And I'm very pleased to introduce Zach Shahan for the session Are 2 Wheels Better Than 4? And that's a real question. So Zach, I'll let you introduce the other panelists.
Yeah, I would love it if you introduce yourself briefly, but while doing so, also answer the question, why is what you are doing the most important thing in the world? So why is your work more important than everyone else's, right? Something like this, yeah.
Thanks, Zach, for that question. First, is it working? Hello? Yeah? Good. Hi everybody, Alban, I'm from UJET. UJET is a high-tech company. We're at the crossroad of clean tech, connectivity, advanced materials in the field of urban mobility. So the target is city contributing to a positive change in the city. And from that perspective, I think it's a good maybe answer to your question, Zach, is important key thing for us is to provide solution to urban mobility, and in doing so, providing an electric scooter which is very different from what exists in the market. So we're here for the first time in Paris for a launch early next year. So that's my intro.
Thank you very much. My name is Jérôme Valentin, and I'm the managing director of a company called Cycle Europe. And at Cycle Europe, what we do is we design, we make, and we distribute bike and e-bikes. And we are located in France, in the north of Troyes, and we have a factory of 200 people. And I would say, to answer your question, that if we were not here, you would not have, since 10 years, any mails in your box in France, because we are supplying all the e-bikes for the French Post. Thank you.
And thank you for the mail we received. My name is Emmanuel Gombeau from Allianz Insurance Company. I'm especially working in covering and establishing new tailor-made products for mobility firms. We are presently insuring Coupe, Drive-E, and the City Scoot, and perhaps within a few days we'll be the insurers of one of the people around the table with whom we are working now. Our idea is that 2 wheels could be or are sometimes in a city better than 4 wheels. We want to absolutely to be at the origin or accompanying this development, and this is why we study this type of new business very frequently now.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Joseph Constanti from New. We're the largest smart scooter company in the world. We've shipped about 330,000 scooters in the past 2 years, primarily in China. All of our scooters are connected, so we have tons of data coming back from our riders, mostly in cities like Shanghai and Beijing and things along those lines. But I'm part of the team that is new to the global markets.
Scooter fans out there, we have the conference for you on the balcony. We have our 2 wheels better than
why is it
before.
that what
Check
we're
it out.
doing at New so important or going to change the world? I don't think that 2 wheels or scooters in general will change the world, but we are all sitting here on this panel a part of a much larger solution that needs to fix a very big important problem, which is urban transportation congestion. And I think if companies that are sitting on this panel can actually begin to convince cities and governments globally, we can actually be a part of something very big, and it may take not as much time as many people think it should take.
So in a previous life, my graduate degree was focused on city planning and especially bicycle planning and how to get people to bike using especially what forms of infrastructure. I somehow migrated to clean tech blogging and then especially focused on electric car blogging. And I get this pushback from time to time of bike advocates saying, oh, electric cars are bad as well because they're cars, they're bad for cities, they're bad they take a lot to produce. And it's very true, but what I found when I used to promote bicycling professionally is it's very hard to convince people of the tremendous benefits of bicycling or using scooters, even though there's like 7 of them that are really strong. So from your perspective, what's the key thing? What are some of the key ways you can convince humans to just leave the car at home or don't go to the car dealership and to actually bike or use scooters? We already know the answer, 2 wheels are better than 4, but how do we get more people to use 2 wheels? Yeah. So what are your thoughts, and anyone can chime in at any point, as to what you need to do to pull people out of their cars, basically?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question. I think it's different things. One is related to what Joe said. It's a lot of raising awareness. We really have to be much more vocal, much more visible, and showing the benefits that we're providing. It's a complementary solution.
How do you have to show them? How do you have to get them? How do you get them in front of people's face? Not just traditional advertising, I assume, but also other means, right?
Yeah, I think it's different channels. As you said, will be traditional marketing, but it's also being vocal through the media. Also having a conversation with the governments, with local authorities. They play actually a key role. We have to be also very much in a dialogue with them, and that's also the reason why as UJET we decided for the first time to be here in Autonomy in Paris, because we felt it was the right platform actually to start our engagement and contribution to the discussion with local governments, with the municipality of Paris, and how we get our scooters and electric scooters in general being much more present in the city. Just on the consumer side of it, I think easiness is key. It has to be easy, it has to be user-friendly, and electric scooters, electric bikes, I think are per definition vehicles that are easy to maneuver, easy to handle, and this is also something we have to put up front. And from the UJET side, I think what we're trying to achieve is to have a scooter which is extremely easy to maneuver, it's lightweight, it's foldable, it's highly connected, it's user-friendly, you use the app to activate it. So this perspective.
But then you do have the common issue of people feeling unsafe getting on 2 wheels in a city, biking around the fast-moving larger vehicles. You have the challenge of people not wanting to bike in certain temperatures or climates or get sweaty. So you still have this, I think there are ways to overcome this, but I think probably you have some ideas on how you get people to open their minds to bicycling instead of just driving places.
Yeah. The first statement that I would make is that I don't believe that there is a choice between 1, 2, 3 or 4 wheels. That is for sure not. I think I'm convinced that depending on the usage and depending on what is it that you're going to do into your mobility, then you will choose 1, 2, 3 or 4 wheels. Okay, that's the point number 1. The point number 2 is that until 1996, we were making only traditional bikes. And then in 1997, we started to make e-bikes, traditional pedelec. Okay, so it's not a moped, it's a pedelec. You need to pedal to get the bike running. And we had many difficulties to actually get the people to understand and to adopt this. It has happened only in 2010 in France that the market started to really grow. And that could be
I mean, we can say the electric bike market has sort of exploded in the past several years in Europe, in the US, in China, much more. We'll come to that in a second.
Yeah. But the point I want to make is this, is that we have been trying a lot of marketing media between 1997 and 2010 to make it happen, and we failed. We basically failed. And the moment we used the 800 shops that we have in France, and we set in each of these shops a set of bike to get the people to try it, then they adopt it. Because the person, I don't know whether you have tried an e-bike yourself, but the moment you tried it, you have a sort of emotion that actually is a sense of pleasure, and then you adopt it. You say, well, why didn't I try before?
So you're saying it was a very focused policy within the shops of pushing people to get on the bike quickly and try it, and
Actually, we are not managing shops, we are supplying the stores, and actually what we did is we actually made some very, very special price for demo e-bikes. So the stores have started to actually have and develop these trial bike. And then if you go to most of our shops today, you have trial bike, and the people can try freely the bike for a few meters, and actually they do a few kilometers because they really love it, and then they buy it. So I would say that trying is really adopting, and that's very important in terms of conviction. You can explain in many ways what is an e-bike, but the best is a demonstration.
And the funny thing, that's exactly the experience people have gotten from in the electric car market as well. That of all the people will think of barriers all day long. You get them behind a wheel and you get them in the car, and all of a sudden they're like, wow, this is great. When I first drove electric cars finally, after covering them for a couple of years, I wrote an article like missed messaging, holy bloody hell or something, missed messaging, they're just focus on how much fun they are, and then just most importantly get them in the seat. Same for electric bikes, same for electric scooters, I'm sure. The scooter situation for me is always, I was quite nervous before getting I've never ridden a motorcycle. I'm not sure if I would handle it well, So that's I assume the number one barrier for people getting on scooters. You have, we talked yesterday about tremendous experience you have in China, how you've broken the market there in this segment. Can you speak a bit more about how you got people to such huge scale?
Well, yeah, China has massive scale when it comes to two wheels, especially around scooters. And especially around electric. So, I mean, I preach this all the time, but I'd love to give a fun fact about China is that 26 million electric scooters are sold every year in China. All right, most of them are lead acid. And then we became really the first lithium-ion battery scooter to break into the market. And our scooters were 2, 3, and sometimes 4 times more expensive than the traditional electric scooters that are on the market. So in terms of why we were able to sell the same type of scooter that could go 45 kilometers an hour for 2 or 3 or 4 times more the money was really simple. And it comes down to the experience and also the respectability of riding a two-wheel device is that most of our customers that came in had disposable income and were using iPhones and Androids, and the type of devices that they were connecting with on a daily basis, were beautifully designed, performed very, very well. And why we were able to step into this market and be able to sell over 300,000 units almost from day one was because we created a product that they wanted, but there was an untapped demand because no one was creating the product or the service for them, a fully connected, beautiful device. And if you look at what's happening in Europe, where we sell less than 10,000 scooters a year as a whole market, is that most of the scooters that are on the market right now are sold to a particular type of customer, moto customer that's buying petrol today. And those customers are not really going to convert over to electric, but they're just like in China, there's a completely large mass of customers that are just untapped that are looking for, a product like you guys are about to deliver, a product that we are delivering into the market right now that they feel comfortable with, and there's not a negative stigma attached to it. And this is not just for two wheels, this is for public transportation at large, is that we need to get rid of this negative stigma and get people out of their own cars and onto transportation devices.
And I think people have a good sense of creating products of desire. That's as much as we like to think we're rational organisms, we're not that rational. A lot of times we're very emotional. We're attracted to things that look pretty and that seem cool. And I think you guys have been focusing very, very heavily and very clearly on this kind of Apple style or Tesla style kind of design and feel and marketing and everything that seems to be working really well for you. I know you have some input too on different types of systems or business models that have been effective for stimulating a broader population to get on two wheels. Yes.
Yeah. In fact, I think that the keys of the development is a nice app, a nice and very quick way for the consumer to find where is the scooter, and there should be a high number of two wheels available in the city, because if the consumer has to walk 20 minutes, that's too long to find one. And then there has to be safety about that. Insurance can, of course, provide this safety in different ways. We have noticed with our customers that more people are older than the one who used thermic scoots or two wheels. And most of them are not so used, mainly women's. And this is why our partners are systematically proposing them a training before they keep the control of an e-scoot, because an e-scoot can be very quick, and the acceleration is sometimes higher and quicker than the thermic one. So prevention is a very important way. We need to train and to propose a training, and then there is to set up an efficient coverage, making that even for 20 minutes a day, people would be covered on liability and on property. Property for the owner, for the company owning the scoot, and liability for passengers and for people walking on the street.
I love that short person-to-person training model, because that seems like the easiest way would be to get someone to go beyond their fears. To probably take 15 minutes, right, to explain what to do in this situation, to let them go around. And that seems like that would have more impact than practically anything else. But a simple app, yeah, it's when there's simple, there's a lot that went into them, which is hard to do. So the companies that do it well do well. I have a lot more questions, but I'd like to open up to people in the audience who have questions. Who's first for the panelists? Somebody's. There we go.
Hi, I'm Sandro from Tel Aviv-based UMO. What we do is actually AI for cities, helping them to get people off cars into sustainable mobility. And when I was younger, I rode the heavy Suzuki 750, etc. So I'm very much in front of scooters. But today, well, I use bikes as my primary vehicle, and I wonder. It's very important to have scooters in the city instead of cars. Everyone who takes car off the road is my friend. But what about the physical part? Really, if we think also the public healthiness, then we should look also for the active transport, for the physical effort part. So I would like to learn about your opinion of this.
Who wants to talk? And I think this is similar to the issue of, we want to promote electric cars and electric mobility, but we don't want to promote them so much that we're not, helping people move to bicycling and walking and active transport. Yeah.
If I may add just one more quote, there's a wonderful article published recently last week over The Guardian under the headline, "Our cities don't need cleaner cars, they need fewer cars." So.
Yeah, to me, these are complementary solutions. You can ride a bike one day, you can ride an e-scooter another day, depending on your needs, depending on where you go, how far you go. So, again, it's complementary. One is not against another. These are different solutions for different purpose, for different needs. Again, one day, you may decide to actually take your bike. It's a sunny day, you don't have a long ride, then go for a bike. Another day it's completely different needs that you have, then an electric scooter would be your fit. So again, it's not one against another, it's complementary. So I don't see an issue here at all.
About having good options.
Yeah, having good option, and having good option for us, it means sustainable mobility solutions. So public transportation, walking, cycling, e-bikes, e-scooters, these are all sustainable mobility solutions designed for cities. So we feel good about it. So.
To speak very direct to your question, living in China, I live in the future of mobility. And I can say that because in any given day, I own a scooter, obviously, but I will ride a mobike or an OFO to my office because it's 1 kilometer away from my apartment. For afternoon meetings, I'll be in an Uber. To get across town to a very far meeting, I'll get on the metro. And then to get back to my home at night, I'll probably take another Uber, right? So using multiple modes, and when I grab lunch, I'm probably walking to and that's in one day, and that happens every single day that I live in Shanghai or in Beijing. Because of just the ubiquity of all these things. And how I look at it, and how New as a company also looks at it, is that every type of two-wheel or four-wheel that now exists is all part of a public transportation system, right? So the future of mobility really is public transport, and you know, hopefully we're not going to be owning our own cars. We're not really going to be owning our own bikes or scooters 10 or 15 years from now. It's going to take a transition point, at least in the urban setting. Now we move out to to other locations. Obviously, that's going to change, but that's how I look at it.
And actually, if I can build on what you just said, Joe, I think integration is key there. It's a multimodal approach. It's all the same. It's transportation, but all those solutions have to be rightly integrated in order that it works efficiently for everybody and according to the different needs of the day.
Yes, I just want to make a comment on this because I'd like to share an experience. 2 weeks ago we had in Paris, we had that day without car. And I'm living in the 17th district of Paris, okay, and I wake up and then I went and buy my piece of bread for the breakfast, and then I decided that I will just go and see what's happening. And then I went to the street at 11 o'clock in the morning, which was the time at which it was supposed to start. And what I saw, I'm leaving Place Wagram, okay, which is quite a busy place during the day, and I saw many cars. And I said to myself, but what is this day without car? What is it? I mean, what does she mean? All right. And then I start to observe the cars, and actually there were almost as many cars as on a daily basis. It was Sunday morning. And it was VTC, taxis, delivery cars, and so on and so forth. And I just thought, I mean, that is just stupid. That is just stupid, because we're trying to make a day where we can see how Paris looks like for a special without car, and actually it doesn't change. And the problem, I think, is the association of the different mode of transport. Why is it that many years ago we created the pavement? Because sometimes we recognize that walking and wheelbase machine cannot merge together. And I think we have to find the right way of dividing the mode of transport, the space, okay? And it's not easy. It's not easy because otherwise we would have done it. Okay, so I think that's one of the solutions that we have to work on, is how to divide this street where we evolve in order to render the mobility the most efficient.
Well, we've written enthusiastically about that day without cars, so we haven't seen so much about the actual, day with cars, day without cars, whatever. But, well, we'll jump to more questions, but, if there's various models that are going out there to try to promote a shift away from pollution. There's ultra low emission zones. There's shrinking road space and adding more bike paths, bike lanes, walking space. There's day without cars. There's a variety of solutions. What would be, if you had one wish for a city? Let's say Paris, because we're here. What would your one policy wish be that they implement to help transport overall, not just your electric scooter companies or bikes, but to help transport overall in the city? And I'll go find another questioner while you guys are answering.
Yeah, I just want to start because I have one precise idea. I am convinced of something very strongly. Of course, I'll talk about the bikes, ladies and gentlemen, but that's what it is. That's my job, And I can tell you, in Paris, you know that we have the Vélib. So we have made 700 stations of Vélib within Paris. Okay, it's a lot of work. Had we, to each of these Vélib stations, had we put a parking place for sophisticated e-bike or normal bikes or whatever for the Parisian, we would have probably multiplied by 10 the number of bikes that are actually used in Paris. Okay, so for me, the only one starting things is a secured parking place for the two wheels. Because this is much more important than the lane. Because in order to justify the lane, you need to have cyclists. If you don't have cyclists, you cannot justify it. And today, the feedback that we have in our 800 stores in France for not buying any sophisticated bikes is, I cannot park it safely. Okay? So that's my answer. Safe parking in Paris is the must.
I don't totally agree with my colleague.
Thank you.
because I think that fixed parking places are not always the solution. And in order to have more flexibility, free floating is even better. Because we have noticed that electric vehicles, globally speaking, are less theft than thermic ones. Because I don't know why, but I think that people who want to steal a car, they are afraid to break down with no more energy. And we can notice whether there are 2 wheels or 4 wheels, the rate and the frequency of theft is much more lower for electrical vehicles than for thermic ones. So I think the best is, of course, being able to park it correctly, but free floating can be very efficient too, and it makes more easy to find a vehicle, a 2-wheels vehicles, when you need it, sometimes very close. And the advantage of that is in Paris, the possibility to park a 2-wheel can be even very close from yourself, just down your flat in the street and not located 200 yards away on a park place.
Please.
So, I would like to actually say that both of what you were saying is actually what's very much needed. Even when you do have free-floating systems, you still have a very difficult time in finding a secure parking place for those. I use sharing programs globally, bicycles and scooters, and the biggest problem that I have is that, especially with scooters, is parking it in a legitimate area that I'm supposed to park in. And if I park it outside of that area, I'm going to be subject to sometimes a $500 fine, for example, in the city of San Francisco. And if I make that mistake, that probably just costs me, 1/3 of what a scooter, a petrol scooter, would cost me in San Francisco for one simple mistake. So I think the combination of free floating is definitely is there. In terms of secure parking, is absolutely there. I mean,
It almost sounds more important for when you have free floating.
For sure, yeah, exactly. For when you have free floating, you need the cities to be promoting, additional parking spaces, right? So here's the irony, and most people probably don't know this, but in the city of Paris, there are 120,000 registered petrol scooters in this city. There are 60,000 spots for parking in the city for scooters. So that means every day there's 60,000 scooters that are illegally parked in this city, which means, well, tickets and other sources of revenue for the city. If they want to solve some problems, remove some car parking spaces from the road, or add some scooter parking spaces in the parking garages, that makes it easier for them to be able to, park these scooters and these bicycles. So it's a combination of free floating, it's a combination of parking, and to make it, just generally more easy to use your 2 wheels.
Providing that parking means taking away from the road or the sidewalk.
Always
Ideally the road.
Never the sidewalk. Never.
Yeah, so, I mean, ideally the road, of course, but for sure there's going to be a situation where they say, oh, but we can just take this portion of the sidewalk for parking. Ideally, we would take space away from the parking for cars or from the roadway, so we could shrink that.
This is what they did.
That demand.
This is what they did. I just want to know.
That's what they do.
No, exactly. I mean, the 700 stations of Vélib in Paris were taken from parking space. Car parking space. Okay, this is obvious because this was in advance. This was the objective of reducing the car anyway. But anyway, to give a kind of nice answer, this is not contradictory. It's complementary. Absolutely. What I mean by this is that I am convinced. I have another conviction, which is the fact that the usage of Vélib and the usage of its own bike is actually complementary. Okay, and it's the same for the free parking bike. Whether they are free parking or attached to a station, it doesn't matter. It's a public bike and your own bike. And living in Paris, the experience shows that we need both. We just need both. It all depends on what we do. Okay, if I go from Place Wagram to the Galerie Lafayette, I will take the Vélib. This is obvious. Okay, but if I go from Place Wagram to the Bois de Boulogne, I will take my own bike. This is also obvious. So I need both. So it's not one or the other. Sorry, please.
You've already emphasized the complementary, but what's your policy solution?
Yeah, but and that's related to your question, actually, the wish or the desire. For me, it's as a manufacturer, we like to see consistency across the whole policy, and also constant support, meaning that we need to have a secured support from governments or administration on e-scooters, for e-bikes, and here in Paris or in France we're actually quite lucky. We got to support national level, regional and local. But it's very rare. If you look across Europe, you have the same situation in the UK with a national program. But that is more or less a bit in Belgium, a bit in the Netherlands, but it's not the case in Italy or Spain. So I think there is a lot to be done when it comes to promoting electric scooters, electric bikes, and getting more support from governments. Again, it's a growing market. We need, like what happened with e-cars, we need to really have that support, they get the market growing across all Europe.
Would top choice be to procure them or to offer financial incentives for them? Or?
It will be a mix of combination policy measures. Obviously, purchasing support, incentives for purchasing is key, definitely.
Sounds like you're saying it's got to be holistic.
It has to be holistic, and often it's not the subject of the panel right now, but often e-mobility is about electric cars, and support is given to e-cars. Incentives are for them very much around e-cars. I think also it's work we have to do, either really to get the support as well for e-scooters.
Thank you. I'm just interested in space. So I work in London, and like any city, it's crowded. Space is at a premium, and increasingly modes seem to need different bits of space in the way that you've just described. I don't really understand what e-scooters need. So if you could just sort of tell me what specific changes to the street environment would make the uptake of that mode increase. Thank you.
That's related to parking, your question, is it?
No, just if they go quickly, does it change the geometry of the roads? Where do you leave them? Or is there no change needed and they can just immediately drop into a big city?
Well, I'll answer really quickly. I mean, there's no changes needed whatsoever. There's 26 million new scooters that are sold on the streets of China every single year, and we haven't changed the layout of any of the streets. There's no, this street is accessible by electric scooter or not. So they're riding right alongside cars. The issue in a lot of European cities is that city traffic is much faster than in China. So on land level roads, not highways, you're still seeing speeds, especially here in Paris and Barcelona, where you're getting speeds of 60, 70 kilometers an hour by an automobile and a lot of these petrol scooters, where the electric scooters right now that we're under homologation for are going about 45, 50 kilometers an hour. So the one issue that you asked earlier was like, how do you get people over to electric, is that there is this space where they feel a little uncomfortable riding around on a device that's only going 45 kilometers, where everything else around them is going by at 50, 60. So it really would be the cities then encouraging automobile traffic, slowing down to speeds that are much more realistic for urban moving, if that makes sense.
It seems like, I haven't heard of any, but it seems like electric scooter lanes would be, you have a sidewalk, a bike lane, like that. He says no. We got so much space. Another question back here.
Thank you. Oliver Lambert, former member of the board of one of the biggest cyclist association here in Paris, MDB. And coming back to the fear about thief, I absolutely agree with what you say. That is probably the biggest break from the people getting into the bike and buying a nice and efficient bike. You can see that on the average price of selling price between France and Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, or whatever. The difference is the rate from 1 to 3 to 1 to 5. On these aspects, I would like to check a bit the insurance industry, because most of the insurance today, they don't have specific coverage for bikes, so it's included on the household insurance. So when you want to insure your bike for more than 1 or 2 or 3,000 euros, you have to find for a specific insurance. And today, you can insure a Ferrari or a Tesla or any kind of car, but you cannot ask for a coverage of 3,000 euros for your own bike. That was the first point. So you can answer directly on these aspects. And the second one is also the misperception of the people about the thief. And on my very own personal experience, during that time I had to work in Aubervilliers, and you know that if you park your bike in Aubervilliers, the chance of finding it again later, late in the night, is very low. So I had to convince myself, saying, okay, how much will I save with my bike? How many stolen bikes can I afford per year? Okay, 3. Probably at the 3rd I will lose my self-control, but okay, in my mind I prepared myself saying, okay, if I manage to have my bike for 4 months on a daily basis, is already a win-win. I never got stolen because I had 3 locks. But the people have to convince themselves and saying, okay, how much does a car cost per year? Nearly 5,000 to 500,000 on average. How much cost my bike? How much can I afford to lose and still be winning on these aspects?
First, I would like to say that till very recently it was difficult to find insurance for e-bikes, even if they are at less than the amounts you've mentioned. I think it's really possible now. But I also do agree that in some areas the frequency of rates is so high that it's very difficult to avoid very high rates. So it's like that. We are linked to frequency and the value of the bike. What I can say concerning scooters, not bikes, is that with the clients we have a very, very, very little number of theft at the moment. And the clients in Paris are looking for this type of use more and more. One of the major clients we have is City Scoot. They only launched their service 1 year ago, about 14 or 15 months, just in end of spring 2016. And at this time they started with only 1 rent per day, and their breaking point is 4 rents a day. Now they are between 6 and 7. So I think really people trust more and more this type of use, and they don't fear anymore because they find it safe. These type of scoots are systematically equipped with 1 or 2 helmets. There are gloves. They are equipped for such a use. So I think the fear of using electric vehicles is disappearing a lot. And
it sounds like this sharing service model opened people up, because it made people feel like this is for them, not just for scooter people. This is for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So I have a question from the Emperor of Mobility as a Service over here.
Hello, Jakub Stepper. I have a question, because we discussed the issue of private transport, private usage, but as we've heard, a big chunk is deliveries and all kind of transportations services. So in which way can electric scooters, electric bikes and new business models around this area help cities, and what can municipalities do to foster this kind of services?
But the mail service bike guy had to go for a flight, but does somebody have
Yeah, when it comes to delivery, or this is not our positioning, that's not the market we're tapping today. It might evolve in the future depending how it goes. But you mentioned a term which is interesting, which is developing and proposing new business model. From our perspective, when it comes to sharing, for instance, we wouldn't go to, we recognize indeed the importance of sharing nowadays, but due to the specificities of our scooter, by the way, it's foldable, that I will also provide some solutions when it comes to space and parking. But due to the specificity of the scooter, then we're actually thinking about a new business model for sharing, which will be around corporate fleet, which will be also around sharing, social sharing, that could also go into sharing within for clients in the hotel. So this is the type of reflection we're having into what type of new business model in the sharing economy we could actually contribute to as UJET.
To comment a little bit upon especially the delivery and courier use, and then also tie that to sharing vehicles, whether they're bicycles or scooters, electric scooters. One, we're building out a vehicle that's ready for delivery, and really understanding a connected device into the delivery system makes it easier for fleets to manage their vehicles, make them more efficient, manage them. But more importantly, what's very interesting with sharing companies, you find this in Barcelona, you find this in Asia, is actually a lot of the sharing vehicles, whether they're bicycles or scooters that are on the streets, are being used by couriers themselves and being used by delivery guys to do that last mile delivery. So these scooters and bicycles that are being put on the roads for a normal consumer to use are actually being utilized in a delivery model, right? So it's this kind of hybrid thing that the market naturally just builds using the tools that are given to it. And so when we build something specifically for a delivery model, what we may be building for a sharing model may actually be kind of Frankenstein by users themselves to be able to meet their daily work needs. So it's very interesting to see what's happening in a variety of markets.
So we have to move over. I'm moderating another panel right now in the auditorium on new mobility solutions for old pollution problems, where we're basically going to talk about this stuff as well, but go into more topics as well. So I hope everybody will go join us in the auditorium. As a last question, as I'm packing up, one of the hottest stories of the year has been gas and diesel car bans in cities. The talk about certain nations or cities doing this. I was going to ask, do you support this, yes or no? But I think maybe better. Do you think this is going to become a big theme with global cities banning gas and diesel cars?
Well, the example of Paris is very evident. The mayor has decided that in 2024 diesel cars would be banned and all motor cars would be banned at 2030. So I think perhaps that won't be so soon, but that will happen anyway. And in this case, electric cars will have to take and to replace this type of vehicles.
My comment on it is, if you take 1 million petrol scooters petrol cars off the streets of Paris or off any city street around the world, and you put 1 million electric cars on those streets, you still have 1 million cars. So you still have the congestion, you still have the problem. So taking petrol, just a simple plan to take petrol off the roads is not the be-all and the end-all. It's the right step in the right direction, but it doesn't solve the much larger problem, which is our urban congestion that we're suffering right now. So this needs to be done in a way where it's combined with much more intelligent thinking about public transportation, two-wheel transportation, foot transportation, and looking at the much larger picture. But what makes good PR is saying we're going to take all petrol off the street, and that at least gets people thinking and talking. And so from that perspective, I think it is very good. And I'll let you...
No, I was just about to say what you said. It initiates great discussion and debate, and we're here to provide solution, having that in mind that by 2030, indeed, there will be no other solution actually to put cars away from cities. So from that perspective, we're actually here to provide solution and contribute, to that. But again, replacing cars by e-cars is not going to resolve the congestion issue at all. So that's where we like to play a game.